Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a mystery thriller film, Red Island. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with a distressed man named John getting chased by an unknown figure in the woods. He is running away from the danger that the creature can bring. When he notices a cave not so far from his position, he sprints towards it and hides. However, he is still not safe and feels that a pair of eyes are watching for his every move. In the next scene, John is under interrogation about the happenings on their trip and his archaeologist wife, Amy. John is sitting in front of the interviewer, and it looks like he hasn't had any sleep for days. He gets an uneasy feeling and looks like someone who has been in a lot of traumas in the past. He is blaming himself for what happened, as he reminisces his memories before the tragedy. He is just trying to make Amy feel better after her miscarriage. Miscarriage not only affects the physical being of a woman, but highly impacts her mental state as well. The husband thought that perhaps bringing her on a trip to a remote island could make her feel better and connected to him. They are there to unwind, and for a greater purpose to locate ancient indigenous Americans' artifacts. John hears a noise from a distance while picking up woods to build a fire, and Amy is also aware of the noises. They think it's just the wind brushing with the trees. This can't be a wild animal, because the place is so abandoned, and not a single trace of wildlife can be seen. That night, they share a conversation in front of a campfire. The two are giving the impression of two people who just met. They are pretty distant from each other. Then John realizes that his satellite phone is not working like it is supposed to. He shows his utmost disappointment to the device, calling it useless. The couple starts roaming around the woods the moment they wake up. The trees are undeniably towering them. It is gigantic with monstrous gnarled roots. Amy is in awe upon seeing the sight of a tree with ancient carvings all over its trunk. He is observing his wife, because he cannot help but have strange feelings about the island. He wants his wife to feel happy. While his wife is occupied, he lets her do her thing, so John cannot ruin Amy's sublime connection with nature. He wants her to recover, and if this is her way of coping, then her husband must try to stand by his wife all the way through. John seems very careful with his words to his wife, as if Amy is a fragile and expensive jar that will break any minute when she gets hurt. John knows that his wife may harbor resentment towards him about the tragic event of losing their child. Nevertheless, that night while they are sharing a meal, talking about random stuff, John concludes that being on an island without anyone might restore their relationship. At 2 p.m. in the afternoon on their third day on the island, Amy decides to hike to a rocky mountain a few kilometers away from their camp. She is feeling motivated and ecstatic to move, so John follows her. The wife is fascinated by the simplest things on the island, like a stack of rocks on top of each other. She claims that they are powerful, whereas John is puzzled. John wants to have unity with her, but they have a different perception of things. He cannot decipher how Amy's world works, or how her brain is wired with nature and stuff. John's mind is clouded by something. He always looks worried for some reason. It feels like he is hiding something or that he has an ulterior motive. John seems preoccupied one way or another. It is because they are on an uninhabited island, where no one ever dares to go to, and that there is something more than meets the eye. Exhausted, John seeks a little time to rest. A while later, he lit his cigarette, while leaning on a bed of rock and moss. He is contemplating his wife and the trip. He was sure their connection was coming back, but his wife proved him wrong that night. She appears to be distant towards John, and she makes an excuse that she is tired, when John attempts to make love with her. They continue the hike the following morning. John is making fun of Amy, while she is crossing a puddle. It is not a secret that John is making their time on the island. He is making an effort to lighten the mood. It seems to work because Amy is laughing, especially when John falls flat on his face after moving forward. Moments later, they find themselves throwing balls of mud at each other. John accidentally throws a huge pile of it on Amy's face, which makes her offended. She takes her revenge by throwing her husband mud as well. Since their clothes are stained with mud and dirt, the two then go to a pond nearby to wash up. Amy notices that a figure from afar is watching them. John gets his gun and shoots in the direction, which makes Amy mad for bringing the weapon, because she told him to get rid of that thing. John reasons out by saying that he brought it for extra precautions. This leads to an argument between the two, so they part their ways to cool their heads off. Surprisingly, John calls his assistant using the satellite phone. The real deal behind all of this is that John has a hidden agenda, which is why he wants to go to the island for financial gain. John wanders around the vicinity of the island where a native plaque lies. He stares at it as a flashback happens, showing him being financially unstable. He receives a call about an old man looking for someone to find an old native plaque, the cursed shrine. He did his research beforehand and found out that it was placed there to commemorate a tragic event. This is the reason why the locals are afraid to set foot on the island, and they believe that something is protecting it. In this scene, images of a weird half-man, half-animal are shown on the site. In fact, John knew it all along, but he turned a blind eye. His worries intensify when his wife disappears. He checks the camp for any sign of her, but she is nowhere to be found. He suddenly remembers the stack of rocks his wife adored, so he makes his trail up there. When John arrives at his destination, he proves himself correct, because Amy is lying unconscious beneath the rocks, to an opening of the cave. Since it takes some time to bring her consciousness back, John takes his wife back to camp that night. He puts a bandage over his wife's deep scratches. He suggests that they must go to town the next day to get her wound treated, but Amy refuses. She recommends changing the bandage tomorrow, and the problem will be solved. This time, John cannot stop himself from asking where she got it from. Amy stresses that she does not remember. John wakes up after a strange wet dream of his wife being naked in the middle of the night. He prepares himself to get the old native plaque at the other smaller island near their camp. He loads the plaque on the boat, but it fails to start. He calls his assistant to pick him up using his satellite phone. But it will take a day, so John is left with no choice but to swim his way to the camp with the plaque in his backpack. He knew right from then that something would go wrong after taking the plaque from its old place. He discerns the island becomes more eerie and silent than it was before. He also feels like someone is following him. John tells Amy that they need to head back home because of the injury in the malfunctioning boat. However, she refuses and insists on staying. Meanwhile, John's assistant is on his way to the island with another boat, so everything is settled. But he can't change his wife's mind. At this point, John knows there is something wrong. Amy is always out in the woods and is starting to act strange since he found her in the cave, unconscious. The fear that locals feared about the place never leaves his head after that. It is haunting him every moment. Amy suspiciously enters a cave while looking for a place to rest during their hiking session. At this point, she is talking to a mysterious creature she seems comfortable talking to. Then the creature starts crawling to get her. On the other hand, John starts to get worried about Amy and her whereabouts. John calls her name, hoping she will immediately respond. But John hears nothing from her. As he finds her, John can feel a pair of eyes shooting glances in his direction. He starts to be suspicious, but he is also calming his nerves. John is trying to run away, but gets distracted by something behind the cluster of ferns. Then his hands begin shaking when he sees his assistant lying dead on the ground. At this point, he is certain that they need to escape the island all at once. Then he washes the blood off his hands. It's just dirt, but his mind is playing games. He is in a state wherein he is starting to suspect everything he gets in contact with. The sun hides and the sky gets dim. John is still searching for Amy. He wants to believe that she is still somewhere safe. Then a figure from beyond the tree catches his attention that speculates John that it is his wife. Therefore, John follows it without a doubt. At a single blink, he falls to the ground after an attack from behind. After he gains his consciousness, Amy shows up in front of her husband and expresses her anger for lying to her. John tries to explain himself, but only apologetic words come out of his mouth. He is blaming himself for what happened to his assistant. He explains to Amy that something attacked him, and they must get out of the place as soon as possible. However, no matter how hard he persuades his wife, she doesn't listen. Amy assumes that John will leave her once they leave the island because their relationship is not working out. At the moment, she is on the verge of crying. She moves toward him and gives him a bite on the neck before leaving. Due to this, John gets alarmed. The action of his wife is one of these monsters that the locals are scared of, and that makes him lose his mind. Afterward, Amy starts changing her appearance, and John's eyes become frozen, and beads of sweat start pouring on his face. At this point, he is in a state of unease upon seeing his wife. Amy's skin takes on the appearance of a lizard, complete with monstrous and razor-sharp claws, and it looks like an eerie vicious creature with a ravenous appetite for blood. Not long after, while gathering all the courage and strength he could get, he dashes away from the place. He is skipping over huge rocks, braving the gigantic roots, trying to survive out of the misery he is in. Also, this is probably the right time to show off his gun, but his supposed protection is out of reach. The movie ends when he reaches the edge of the island where the sea is located. Using his shaky body, he manages to swim away from the island and to reach the boat his assistant used. As he hears the engine roar, John feels the rush of relief. At this moment, he can't help but stare at the monster on the island in front of him. He is safe, but Amy is not with him. The reality of him going back home without his wife is breaking him to pieces. He ruins the supposed happily ever after for their relationship. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Peace out.